Just one of the things I thought I'd just open the discussion up with, just around for people just to contextualise, I guess, Singapore and Asia more broadly. I thought just a view from yourselves about Singapore as a country, society, culture, and then maybe just a few comments around how that connects with investment, risk-taking and innovation as well, because I think we've heard about Silicon Valley and Randy's talked about that. We've heard about the Maori culture and sort of view on investment as well, but I think Singapore is sort of quite unique as well in terms of society, culture, and what would drive investment as well.
Yeah, I guess if I take this, every country is unique in its own way. But before I get there, a little observation. The fastest growing technology trend is today AI. And I believe the fastest growing trend in investment is being angel investors. They're AI as well. The subtle difference there is that AI to be perfect perhaps require large data sets to train themselves on. They require visibility. And perhaps angel investors need to be a little more collective to be able to have more visibility and perhaps more access to data to take better and informed decision. And for that, perhaps they need to join hands and collaborate with other forms of investors and cross borders to truly get the value out of investments. That said, talking a little bit about Asia and Singapore. Asia is very diverse, so there's no one-size-fits-all there. Uniquely diverse there. Singapore is like a melting pot. It has got people from all parts of the world who all have this immigrant mentality and who've come to Singapore perhaps to make a good living. One of the things that I learned, and I moved to Singapore in 1997 from India, and I realized that this is a country where I've landed up. It's small. It's a little red dot which you can't even find on the map. But that country is uniquely different because it really, really punches above its weight. And to be seen and heard in a world which has got more than 200 countries, much bigger in size, and to play ball with people who are perhaps far more influential, you got to make yourself seen and heard. And that's the reason why perhaps Singapore has made its wealth, because people there have the ability to think beyond the ordinary. They think in a very, very extraordinary way. And Singaporeans realize that to create an economy where good money draws more good money into it, it has to go and perhaps create its wealth where opportunity lies. So in Singapore, most of the funds that are there, starting from the two of the biggest sovereign funds that are there, which is Temasek and GIC, they started making money by putting their money in opportunities outside Singapore. Today, there's perhaps $3.3 trillion of AUM which Singapore manages, and 7 out of 10 investments that Singapore has made money out of is perhaps outside Singapore, and many of them are in emerging Asia, markets like China, India, et cetera. And we are much smaller fries. We've taken a leaf out of that chapter. I've gone through the phase of being an angel and then realized that as a Lone Ranger, perhaps I don't have that much of firepower, and if I continue to be an angel, I'll soon run out of money. So perhaps it is better to put my money as a shareholder in a structured environment where my money, along with a lot of other people's money, can have more collective firepower, and we can punch above our weight. So that's the learning from Singapore, to be able to think big and think smart.
Thank you.
So Singapore culture, I'd say there's a lot of history. So I'm born and raised second generation. Singapore came about with a lot of migration, right? So the Chinese dominate the country, but there's also very interesting, traders, entrepreneurs from India, parts of Malaysia and the Malayan kind of sea belt. Amongst the Chinese, there's actually a parallel. I think even the Taiwanese would understand this. The biggest families in Southeast Asia, not just Singapore, comes from one province, 2 districts, right? Two cities. So it's the Fujian province. So, the Li Ka-shings of the world, the Robert Kwok's of the world from Malaysia, and most of the families in Indonesia that controls the country, they come from that place. So the mentality has always been, we left China, we came, we have to survive. So trading, figure out a way I can make money. If the government don't allow me to, like Indonesia, I'll do something else. Short term, survive. So that's how everything started. Now, Asians being Asians, and I've been traveling a lot since I started a venture fund. Risk taking is it's a taboo, right? Everything is stable. Please don't take risks. Please don't fail. Please don't bring down a family name. If you can study, if you can be a lawyer, engineer, doctor. This is extremely a bit more proficient maybe in Korea and Japan. It's actually like really in your face. I've known someone who have to sell his company that is profitable, making about $30 million a year because the mother-in-law wants him to work for a big company. Have you heard this before? No. So it's like he was proposing and the mom's like, what? Where do you work? No. Like, no. Okay. So he has to sell his company and get married. Okay. So might be a good thing. I don't know. Yeah. Now, and then over the years, we've changed. So we education system is very much. They teach us to be good employees because they're attracting the MNCs to town. And Singapore, as you know, is a very famous place for being regional headquarters for a lot of companies, including companies from here. So the level of creativity is a bit stifled, right? We are trained to listen, we are trained to follow, we are trained to go by the book, which Singapore is very famous for. So there lies the good talent pool for good MNCs. So when I was growing up, I think entrepreneurs, most of you are probably, we have this rebellious nature in ourselves, right? So we always question stuff. So in Singapore, when you question stuff means you have to stand and face the wall, right? So what happens is we stop questioning stuff. So then I told the government like 5-10 years ago that like, if you want to pick entrepreneurs, you go to the schools and find the kids that are facing the wall. That's it. So grab them and then move them to some other school. Yeah. But since 2006-07, Singapore put in a lot of the government. So now comes the government. So the government put in a lot of R&D, a lot of money they set aside for innovation. It started out in biotech and then they kind of spread it out. My call is they probably did a bit too much in biotech, but now they kind of realize they have to diversify and they're choosing maybe between 4 to 6 other sectors that they're putting money in. And the result of that, 2009, they started to fund risk investors. So in 2009, what happens is if you are an angel, you form a fund, you put $1, the government will match $5. And if the company do well, you can buy me out for 5% interest a year. If the company don't do well, it's okay. So that allows any angel fund to spread the risk. Right? So in the past, you may only be able to do 10 deals. Now you can do maybe 30 deals. So that's how the entire system started. So, and till today, they realize the same thing. So they know that 2009 till 2014, about 6 years, angel, not too bad. They kind of split everything. And then foreigners came. And then they found the Series A gap, which is what I'm seeing right now. Then they moved that system up. Then they say, okay, if you put up to 2 million, I'll match it 1 for 1, and you can buy me out. Same thing, 5%. So then we came again and we raised Series A funds, and it's continued, right? So that's how I think Singapore became known as the place to raise capital. It's like the sandhill of Southeast Asia. So whoever wants to raise money, they'll come to Singapore.
Thank you. It was really good overview of Singapore. I think some of those unique features of the environment, the history, is quite important to understand sort of the view around investment, raising capital, risk, the government's role. What sort of, you've been in New Zealand, I think, AB, this is your second trip you said here. What sort of one thing you think that we do really positively, and what's one negative thing that you've sort of seen in terms of initial impression of the New Zealand angel and startup ecosystem?
Well, it's just a couple of days of observation, but a lot of data points which I picked up from the conversations that I heard. So New Zealand is also uniquely an immigrant society. I came across people who are probably, they've come from all over the world to make New Zealand their home. So the mindset of the immigrant is very much ingrained here. But that said, being geographically where it is positioned, it seems, and with the abundance that is around here, people seem to get into a bit of a comfort zone. And the other element is that, unlike the immigrants which we see in Asia, where we believe that we should get out of our comfort zone and go after opportunities which can give us multiples, which can give us quicker opportunities to make money, and then after making that money, plow that money back into the home ecosystem, and that cross-pollination needs to develop. That is something which is perhaps not started here, because I see people here have that mentality of that old venture capital adage, which started perhaps in the 60s and the 70s in California, which is that 100-mile radius syndrome. You tend to invest within your neighborhood, within your region, and so on and so forth, and stay put there and watch over your investments. However, as the world has moved along and it has become flat, it has become truly borderless, you got to figure out and see data points in terms of where there are more opportunities for your money multiplying faster. Where are there more opportunities of unicorns being born in shorter span of time? Where are the consumption? So perhaps you should follow that mentality and go beyond your 100-mile radius and join the dots with other ecosystem, and either pull the trigger yourself or perhaps ride on a bus which will take you to those destinations, which will give you the opportunity to play the game along with the others. And here there's no competition. I mean, we are not competing with anyone, because these are roads where you need to join hands with multiples of people who are complementary in their nature, and each one of us, we play a role in getting the flowers to bloom. But after doing that, after we make our money from there, bring back that money and the expertise back to your own ecosystem, and create it as a destination by learning from the others and bringing that capital back, and then help this country to flourish. So if I have one little advice to the angel community, I haven't seen a more vibrant angel community than what I see here today. But perhaps, if you take the game a notch above, if there are angels who know that they have finite amounts of money, if they can put it together in structures and call themselves, it's all nomenclatures. Angels have a halo on their head. Venture capitalists call themselves, the capital makers or whatever. It's just that you play the game a little differently. So go a notch above, put your resources together, create a fund, and perhaps try to play the bigger picture, and thereby close the gap in the funding that we see from stage to stage. So here there is a clear gap in availability of growth capital. And that can only happen when you can up the ante a bit and perhaps take it to the next level. And you have enough firepower amongst individuals here. And if you just guys can come together collectively with a purpose, you can create great VC funds. We did it ourselves. I mean, we were all individuals coming from very ordinary backgrounds. We were founders, made a little money, realized that the game of angels are a little more lonelier, and perhaps, pardon me saying this, but angels have that peer pressure. I know I need to do better than you, and so on and so forth. And I'm being very candid here. I've gone through that path myself, and the fear of missing out, the FOMO fear. So angels suffer from these kind of problems. Although you might create associations and stuff like that to be together, but if you can change that game a little bit, then you create better structures, more regulated, and perhaps give more assurances to external investors to come and join your party. And that's how you grow your fund. And you have more collective firepower to go beyond your comfort zone, and perhaps that's how you create more multiples. That's my observation.
Great. Same question for you, Jeff.
Yeah, so I echo. So Singapore is about the same size as you guys. There's only one angel group. Yeah, so just FYI. And
I would say though that New Zealand's a lot bigger, so the way of communities.
Yes. So that's the difference, right? So, so there are people doing angel, but they are not structured. They're not doing it collectively. But even that one angel group isn't very active. So I think here is amazing. So usually what I see is, if you don't have reasonable exits, angels get jaded, right? And then they stop, and then they go back to real estate. So I think keep doing what you're doing. I think the thing that I see there's genuinely interest and commitment and love for creativity and innovation and your fellow man to do good, right? And helping and giving back. So this is great. I love that. One thing that stood out, obviously, is the adaptability of Kiwis, right? This is what I hear all the time. When a Kiwi graduate, they move somewhere else. Like, I was like, what? Why? Who? What for? Like, so, and then a lot of you worked overseas and came back, which is something I don't normally see. So, in fact, I've never been to a country that is kind of structured that way. So I think you guys have that, innate, maybe it's historical, right? There's a culture of going overseas, so you follow. And it's okay if you want to take that risk, it's perfectly okay. So this brought me to a story where I lived a year in Dubai. I met the richest Chinese in Dubai. He owns, he's a neighbor of David Beckham at the Palm thing, right? So he's like, oh yeah, I'm neighbors of David Beckham, but David doesn't live there. So, so he owns a bunch of things. So I said, why are you here? He said, I left China when I was 17 to sell motorbikes in Iran. I'm like, okay. Sure, okay. So I asked, then I have a feeling that he came from a certain place because I used to live in Shanghai. So I said, where is your hometown? It's Wenzhou. So if you don't know, Wenzhou is the most entrepreneurial place in China. So I said, okay, I get that. So why do you do it? He said, because everyone in my family does that. We never ever want to go to university. The first thing I want to do when I finish high school is to start a business. That's it. So culturally, it has always been that way. The biggest shoe manufacturers are from Wenzhou. The biggest landowners in Shanghai are from Wenzhou. Perhaps your shoes are made there. Mine probably is. So I think culturally, there's something unique about New Zealand. And then I've said this a couple nights ago. Singapore and you guys are about the same, kind of like Israel, but Israel is kind of like, I only have one place to go. When I start a company, I have one place to go because nobody around me wants me, so I need to go somewhere else. Singapore is confused because I can speak Chinese, I can speak English, I don't know where to go, right? I can go up to Malaysia, I can go down, I can go China, I can go anywhere else. But we don't. So many reasons, like I said again, Chinese don't understand our Chinese. Americans don't understand our English because we speak too fast in the US. So you guys have the advantage where, right, they find your English quite cute. Right? And you look about the same, right? Like Singaporeans are kind of all over the place. We have Indians, Malays, we have Eurasians like me, they kind of get confused. So when they hear English, they're like, wait, slow down, I don't understand you. So we are a bit confused, and we try a lot in China when we first started because of our history, and then we fail a lot. Right? Chinese usually try to take advantage of us because we are very go by the book. Right? The Taiwanese and the people from Hong Kong, they can adapt better than we can. So I think I see that. And for some reason, most companies are B2B. So this is something I found yet again. And it fits developed markets. And one thing, sometimes hearing some startups and hearing you guys tell me what companies you pitch, I'm like, there's nothing new with these companies. It's another copycat, right? So to me, there's something about here. Like you dare to compete, either blindly, you don't know there are existing investors or existing competition outside, or you know exactly you're good, you will be good at doing this in the next 5-7 years. So I think a lot of you started here, become number 1, and then when you move to the US, you're like, oh my God, I'm number 10, right? But you did not give up, you keep going. So I like that about your companies. And then I think you have the funding gap thing. Yeah, maybe structuring collectively, yes, but I would say the harder part, even in Singapore, what happens is, if you raise a fund just to do Singapore, you will never raise a fund. Singapore is too small. So our funds tends to be Southeast Asian funds, right? Bigger market, bigger opportunity. So the LPs are, okay, there is something here to do. So I think it's the same, right? If it's a fund for New Zealand alone, it's harder. And if you look at the history, it's B2B. Right? B2B exits are so-so. So my feeling is government needs to step up. I think they are. Sometimes I can feel they are trying, and then I can feel that you don't think they are trying. But I can feel, right? But it's the same thing. Every country has the same issue, right? They are trying, and then they kind of not sure or kind of get stuck somewhere. And then you guys are trying to help them out. So I think keep helping them. They will eventually get there. Maybe forming co-GP funds. Let's say New Zealand, Australia, you look at Australasia, you look at a bit of Southeast Asia, then the fund can be bigger, but then you can carve out X% for New Zealand. So LPs are looking at investing in something bigger, but they have some allocation here. But I think government might be one way to kind of kickstart the Series A part. And other than that, not much. You guys need to have more data points. You need to travel more to the US, to China, to India, and definitely to Israel. So anything B2B, you have to go to the US and Israel a little bit more, just to understand what's going on there. And if possible, bring the founders along.
Thank you. We're running slightly behind time, so last final question. For New Zealand companies that would want to engage with Singaporean funds and investors, any advice of how they'd, sort of two parts of the question, like what sort of New Zealand companies would be interesting? And I think, Jeff, you've sort of touched upon a few things there, but also just practically, what's the right way you'd sort of suggest for New Zealand companies to look at Singapore and other Southeast Asian funds as potential investors?
New Zealand has certain strengths, and you should play to your strengths. You guys could be fantastic when it comes to perhaps some impact in investing in technologies which are helping in ag tech, maybe in clean energy, and so on and so forth. So play on your strengths, showcase them to the world, bring them to funds which are willing to look cross-border, and try and see if you can get them funded. And by doing so, you're actually joining the dots, and the fund which is coming from overseas will naturally try to pull you into markets for their own selfish benefits. So you got to collaborate more. And perhaps one way of doing it could be whether it's the government or whether it's private investors, if they are putting a skin in the game with funds and platforms and other groups abroad, there is a natural tendency beyond words. The world of collaboration, we all talk a lot, but at the end of the day, underlying there's no action, right? We call ourselves NATO nations, no action, talk only. But the fact is that today, if you put a skin in the game, the moment you do that, there's a thicker level of collaboration which you can play on. And then you scratch each other's back and then try to use that common interest in that underlying asset to make them global. Give them the tailwind that is required to tap on the exponential needs in markets where there's insatiable demand, and ride on that and try to push it towards a unicorn, decacorn status. Collaboration is key.
Thank you. Jeff, your advice, practical sort of recommendations for New Zealand businesses?
I've done this in multiple emerging kind of startup ecosystems, from Pakistan, Bangladesh, all the way to Nepal, etc. So the first thing is what the government plus private sectors are doing right now. Like right now, you need to have, say, a couple of very big annual tech conferences, startup conferences, and try to bring foreign investors here. Right? It's the more we come, the more we are convinced. So that's the first thing. Because if we've never seen you, never met you, can't feel the ecosystem, it's very hard for us to commit capital. So that's the first one. And when we do our first deal, we will never lead because we are not here. So we need someone here that we trust to lead. Hence, we need to come to meet you, whether it's the funds or you guys. So actually, if you guys kind of form a fund, not the entire group of you have one fund, but if you have, let's say 30% of your capital has one fund, and they lead a lot, I will follow, right? Instead of me looking towards the Series A, B guys, which is not many. So if you created another vehicle and then you guys run it kind of like a venture fund, and then you lead the rounds, then we will follow. So that's the first thing. In 2012, we invested in three founders from New Zealand. They moved to Singapore. It's called Trade Gecko. First round, right? So I think that was the first time I actually met Kiwi founders, and very typical Kiwi blokes, right? Very energetic, very sporty, right? I think the family of 4 brothers. They're like, big size and like, very, 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 very cool. Love them to death. So same thing. Did a couple of rounds locally. They tried to raise in the US, couldn't, came back. And by that time, our ecosystem was big enough already. So the A guys can take the round, right? Pre-B, we can take the round, no problem. So we don't need anybody else. When they expand to the West, they purposely chose Toronto, not the Bay Area, right? So they have a team now in Canada. And I would believe that they might be filing for IPO in the next 2-3 years. So never impossible. We have Singapore investors have met and have seen and have backed Kiwi founders already. So it's no issue. So just engage us a bit more. Yeah, eventually we will come. So.
Great, thank you. I don't know if there's any time for questions, or Robbie, if you want to wrap things up.
There's a burning question or comment?
Just one. Historically, the Singapore government has looked at worldwide trends to be able to identify areas for possible development. Jeff, you talked in particular about needing more support at a government level to help the ecosystem. Do you see analysing worldwide trends, or taking a far more future approach to helping identify industries, both of you, industries that are ripe for development to meet worldwide demand? Is that a key thing that we need to be looking at as an ecosystem?
I will tell you the answer is yes. So Singapore has looked at trends. They picked biotech in 2006, and then they brought a lot of researchers here. I think it's still far away. It takes probably 20 years. And then recently they have picked a few more. So they've picked maybe nanotech, medtech, a bit of AI, data, and a couple more. Historically, the more focused a country is, the better it is. So for example, Taiwan chose semiconductors. Like they only chose one. And just nice, perfect, right? So and then they transform after that. But it's dangerous to choose just one. So I think Singapore realized that as well, right? So biotech wasn't the thing. So now they maybe have maybe a bucket of 4 to 6. I think not more than 7. 4 to 6 is enough. In Singapore, it's kind of small anyway, so you can't do more. And then that's the industry part. Then the ecosystems part, they learn a lot from Israel. So they went to the Yosma Fund, tried to figure out how they did it, and did the 5-to-1 matching thing, copied exactly the same. And then the Series A, what happened was the sovereign wealth, kind of like your AANZ VIF, said, okay, I need to spur the local system, so I need to be anchor investors in 4 or 5 funds. So they just put money straight away. And then they raise a second fund, they will follow. They'll do the anchor for the next one. Right, so kind of like, yeah, so, and Koreans actually do the same thing as well.
That's like truly seeding the ecosystem. And just one little other word, the way the government works there is also, while it's, it works both on the buy side and the sell side. So today they have passed a new regulation which has made Singapore one of the most attractive destinations for funds to domicile. So while you need to put money on startups and on ideas and so on and so forth, you also need to create wealth. And that's where the government is pragmatic enough to pass simplified compliances and regulatory rules, which is attracting funds to domicile there. And that's where money is in supply. It's called SVAC, if you guys want to look it up, especially for the government guys. It's called SVACC, Singapore Variable Capital Companies Act. It just makes life very simple for fund operators like us.
All right. Is it a short one? Okay, last question, so look at the good one.
Jeff, how related are startups in high-tech in Singapore to the universities or the agencies? I mean, the National University of Singapore is one of the most prestigious ones. A-star, it's an expert. So how is the culture and organically, how it works?
Okay, so a bit of history. The biggest Southeast Asian startups and even Singapore startups last 10 years are not IP-based, they are not spin-outs. They are copycats, okay? So that's the first thing. So if the government tells me I have to invest in IP stuff back in 2006, 8, or 9, or 12, I'm out of the business straight away. But they have to do that, right? As a nation, they have to, knowledge economy, they have to do that. They don't understand the timing of it, but they are correct. So startups and universities has actually no link except, many copycats are started by graduates from those schools. Now, the IP spin-out stuff is a normal question. Every country has the same problem. They think the tech is good enough, but it's not. Because the people doing the business plan are in the school. They are not, right? And they are IP lawyers or they are IP guys. They are all patent guys, licensing guys. So that's one. The inventor still wants to teach or research. He doesn't want to take a risk and start a company. So that's two, right? So these are the two issues we normally see. I want to invest in university spin-outs, but it's very hard.
Well, so the chairman's always allowed to have a question. So, yeah, you can applause.
Just a very, very quick comment to AB's point around investing outside of your sort of vested interest, and I think it's a key point in terms of building the angel capability in New Zealand. And often I see clubs and regions, looking to build their regional, startup momentum, which is obviously a great objective. But the best way to do that is to syndicate and engage on a national and global basis, to bring that experience in. And so, that's the means to an end. I think it's a very, very pertinent comment. I think the other spin-off from that is that by syndicating on a broader basis, de-risking as well as creating more opportunity, you start to align on sectors. So rather than legislating for sectors, you create a community of interest-based capability, and the sector becomes an outcome of a collaborative process. That's within our control. We don't need the government to drive that. Once you have a powerful sector capability, you naturally end up with a fund critical mass You know, so there's some execution issues there that we as individuals need to keep front and centre, you know, to establish longevity in what we're doing.
Yep.
So I think that's a comment on your comment.
It's probably a good theme and note to end on, I think.
Yeah, thanks very much, guys.
So
Well done.
finally, the exit. The exit.